Two commissioners at the Energy Regulatory Commission, or ERC, wrap up their terms today, leaving the body temporarily lean until Malacañang appoints replacements. But Chair Monalisa Dimalanta says it's business as usual there. Just yesterday, the commission held its first ever open meeting, part of a broader push for transparency and stronger enforcement. This morning, we speak to Chair Mona about the road ahead and what success looks like over the next 12 months. Chair Mona, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Mikey, and good morning to everyone who's watching us with us this morning.
Okay, let's start with the latest development on the ERC front. From 5 commissioners, you're now down to 2. A little leaner until the president appoints the replacements. You still constitute a quorum, though. But how are you going to be maintaining regulatory momentum with just 3 commissioners, Chair Mona?
Thank you, Mikey. I like your term, regulatory momentum, because that's what we have right now. Actually, we're so happy with the output of our staff. It's really our staff who have been carrying the heavy work for the commission over the last few months, and we've been turning out really quite well, working efficiently. We finally found our groove, and then we have 2 commissioners retiring, as you mentioned. So it's a challenge, but as long as we are 3. We have a quorum and we have a mandate. More importantly, we have the duty to continue to work as if we are 5. Because as I think many of you know, the commission is a collegial body. So even if there are 5 or 3, it's not as if we divide the work among 3 or among 5 people. It's the commission acting as one all the time.
Yeah.
So we can still act as one, even if we are leaner. I like your word, leaner.
Okay, and when it comes to rate cases, Chair Mona, you need a favorable vote of at least 3. So that means you guys always need to make a unanimous decision until there are new appointees. What are your thoughts on this?
That's true. I think the main challenge would be on the rate cases, that we have to all agree. There's no room for dissent if you're a commission of 3 for rate cases. For other cases like the permitting matters that we do, that's fine. 2 of 3 would still pass. But for rate cases, we really have to continue debating and arguing and deliberating until we get to a point of consensus, because there's no, as I mentioned, there's no room for dissent if there are just 3 of us.
Right, no room for dissent and no room for a delay in the appointments. How long of a vacancy, anyone's guess, but how long of a vacancy are you expecting?
I think for the ERC, I think the president is very much aware that this is a crucial post. This is a crucial element of a functioning power sector, not even a progressive power sector, but just for the sector to function, the commission has to have its full body. So I expect that maybe in the next few weeks we would have word from Malacañang on the new appointees. And I think historically also there has not been a long vacancy, except for the period. There was some time in mid-20, I think 2015, 2016, where there was a long vacancy in the commission. But apart from that, I think appointments were made in a timely manner, in a matter of weeks only.
Mm-hmm. You have some visibility on this, Chair Mona. Around how many applicants are there for these posts?
Well, the applications go to Malacañang, but sometimes, for some reason, I'm copied by the applicant. So that's the only way I have visibility. So I think from what I've seen, there are a lot of applications. There are more than 10 that have passed my office. But again, I've no hand, I've no authority on any of these applications.
Okay, moving forward, in his farewell remarks, Commissioner Lumbatan pointed to the ERC's long-standing backlog as one of the agency's toughest challenges. How big is that backlog today, Chair Mona?
Okay, I think when we first did a database of our backlog, that was mid 2023, 2024. We were looking at around 5,000 cases at the time. We have, no, that's mid 2023, that's correct. Then we have trimmed it down to around 3,000 now, because there are also new cases coming in. So it's not as if we said, oh, 5,000, let's stop the clock so that we can clean up first the inventory, right? That's not how it works. So cases continue to come in, and we have, as I mentioned, we have gotten into our groove in cleaning up the backlog, addressing the cases, but we're still around 3,000, I think, at this time.
And a lot of these are legacy issues coupled with new cases. So apart from appointing 2 new commissioners, Chair Mona, what is the ERC looking at to help it clear these cases faster? Maybe staffing reforms, tech upgrades. What's on the docket to make everything more efficient and flow faster?
The digitalization of the processes is really number one. We started with that in 2023, and now we're reaping the benefits. The only way we were able to work efficiently over the last 6-8 months is because we have digitalized our processes, and it has really changed the game for a lot of us here in the ERC. But the second really is structural. I like what you said. Reform. And that's what we were working on last year with Congress. We were hoping that the EPIRA amendment would get passed, because what we have currently is actually an organization that was built in 2001, that is trying to address the issues of 2025. And so there's a huge misfit between the organization and the issues that it's trying to address. And the only way we can have that authority to revamp ourselves, to reform ourselves structurally, is if there is a mandate from Congress. Unfortunately, we were not able to pass the legislation the last Congress. I'm hoping that we still have very good support from both the House and the Senate. We're hoping it gets past this 20th Congress.
Yeah, hoping so that you have the capacity to help reorganize the agency as you see fit. But of course, you need Congress for that. Moving on, just yesterday, the ERC held its first ever open committee. What was that like, Chair Mona? What prompted it? And will this be the new norm?
I'm really hoping it will be the new norm, not just for ERC, but maybe for all our other regulatory agencies. This is something that I have really been pushing for in the commission since I joined, because I know I've been in practice in the energy sector for more than 20 years. I've seen in other jurisdictions that commission meetings are held openly. So it's something that I initiated, in the idea I planted when I joined the ERC. And I'm very glad that in 2023, one of our commissioners who retired, by the way, Commissioner Maceda, joined a study mission to the US. And in the US, she witnessed firsthand commission meetings being held openly with the public viewing, sometimes even allowed to participate directly as the commissioners deliberate. And from that, we were able to convince the other commissioners to pass a resolution among the commission in early 2024, I think February 2024, when we formalized that we will adopt an open commission meeting at least quarterly in the initial stages, because logistically it's also a lot more work for our staff, admittedly. But we have to start. So we started working on it in February of 2024, and then finally yesterday, I'm so happy that we held our first open commission meeting. And this takes us by leaps and bounds in our efforts to make things more transparent, so that our public, because regulatory bodies survive on the basis of trust. There is no other currency by which a regulatory body can measure its success. If the public trusts its decisions, then it can call itself a successful one. But we cannot generate trust if we are not open. So I think we can dispose of perceptions of bias, this idea that certain elements or certain parties are being favored, by just opening up and just letting everyone see what happens in commission deliberations. It also keeps us on our toes. Among
very
the
important.
Very
Thank you
important.
for accelerating the pace of transparency at the ERC. Transparency is crucial to regulation, especially as following the NGCP's ruling, energy consumers across the country will be seeing an additional 10 centavos per kilowatt hour starting this August, applied monthly for several years. What's the ERC doing to ensure that that power companies are held accountable not just for distribution but for fair pricing as well?
Oh, I'm so glad that you tied up those two items, Mikey, because for whether it's for NGCP or the rates of distribution utilities, consumers have the right to know what happened that resulted in 10 centavos per kilowatt hour increase, or what was considered by the commission that resulted in that rate. So usually what happens is we decide, then we explain. But in this case, if we open our commission meetings, the public can monitor directly what issues were considered by the commission. And to address your main point, your main question on what are we doing to ensure fair prices, that's one. We ensure that consumers see the deliberations as they evolve, as we hold more open commission meetings. And then second, of course, it's whether the public sees it or not, it's our job. It's our job as the commission to ensure that only prudent and efficient pricing or prudent and efficient costs are incorporated in the bills of the consumers. I'm a consumer myself. I look for that when we do our study, when we do our evaluation. So I think it's the only guarantee is for the commission to do its job. That's as simple as it gets.
Chair Mona, you're almost midway into your term. You're here until you have this post until 2029, nearly 3 years into your term. What would you say is the most urgent reform that we need right now in the power sector?
I think we've gone a long way in terms of reforms. I think that there's still a lot to do, but we've gone a long way. The first the first issue we need to address is really the physical infrastructure. We have a lot of renewable plants, for example, coming in. Those electrons are desired. We want those green electrons to flow because we don't have to pay fuel for those electrons. We don't have to import fuel for those electrons. But if we don't make sure that the wires are there, that the poles are there for these electrons to get to our homes, then what are those plants for, right? I mean, those will be what we call what I call the tragedy of our time, the stranded assets. So we need to upgrade our infrastructure. But upgrading infrastructure, both distribution and transmission, means we need to pay for those upgrades as well. And this is where it gets a bit challenging, because then the savings on generation will need to move to the other side of the bill, which is transmission and distribution. But in that, the third element that we need in terms of reforms is really to make sure that whoever is watching out for for the migration of those charges, to make sure that, in the end, it's not about moving it from generation to transmission to distribution. It's about making sure that we pay less, because that it should be the result of that should be the fruit of efficiency. And that's the job of the third element, the job of the regulator. The regulator has to make sure that all these things are working seamlessly, and that only projects that benefit the consumers are passed on to the consumers and nothing else.
Yeah, upgrading infrastructure sounds very expensive. When it comes to these upgrades, Chair Mona, where are we now and how far are we from where we need to be?
Oh, I cannot give you the numbers in terms of how far are we from where we need to be. But I think on the end of the transmission, there's been a lot of progress. We're now interconnected Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao finally in 2024. That has been accomplished. But the work now translates to our distribution utilities, and particularly our electric cooperatives. I've said this before, and I will not get tired of saying it again. I think we've neglected our electric cooperatives for quite some time now. Both our electric cooperatives in the main grids, and more particularly our off-grid areas, especially us in Metro Manila, in the cities. We forget sometimes that there is another power system operating outside of of the main grids. And these are our islands. They're not interconnected. They don't have any option apart from the plants that are present there. They don't have a market, a WESM from which they can buy power if suddenly a plant turns out, or a plant goes down, like what has happened in Siquijor and other provinces. We need to address those issues as well.
Yeah, I mean, talking about our power rates are some of the highest in Asia. So there's always talk of how we can bring this down. There were hopes that nuclear energy, a nuclear energy push, would help reduce the cost of electricity in the Philippines significantly. Where are we on this front?
On the efforts on nuclear energy, or developing nuclear energy for power utilization, I think it's the DOE, the Department of Energy, that's leading that charge. Also, Congress has passed the Philatom bill, that because that's the first step. We need to have a regulatory agency specifically for nuclear resource, and the Philatom bill, I think, aims to address that. I'm not sure if the president had signed the bill into law, but that's the first step. I think there are 4 or 5 other steps. So we're actually quite a long way from the realization of this intention, and there's going to be a lot more discussions. I would expect
Yeah.
as we get to that
But are
point.
you guys at the ERC in favor of this direction, Chair Mona?
We're preparing for it. We don't set the policies. That's not our role. The regulator's role is to regulate. The DOE's role is to set the policies. But since we see the writing on the wall, we are preparing ourselves to be equipped, to be capacitated once the policy is actually made.
Now, still on high electricity rates, structural reforms take time. But there are short-term measures, such as the removal of VAT on our electricity. Are you in favor of this?
If I had the magic wand, yes. I think that would be the easiest way to lower our bills. Because, you mentioned earlier, we have the highest, one of the highest, we're second only to Singapore among our neighbors in terms of the level of power rates that we pay. But that's also because our rates are not subsidized. Not only are our power rates not subsidized by the government, it's also bearing heavy taxes. So if government cannot extend subsidy, then maybe take out the taxes so that the burden would be less. But ultimately, I think it's a call that needs to be made by Congress and our economic managers, because they have to. I must admit, I do not see the full picture. I do not know what those taxes are used for. And if there are social services that are funded by those taxes that will no longer be made available because the taxes are foregone, then we also need to be responsible enough to appreciate that.
And what are the other solutions on the table to help bring down the cost of power in the country, Chair Mona? Perhaps, expanding retail competition, rooftop solar, and net metering. What are the other things that we can do?
Yes, I think on the consumer level, there are so many things that can be done and that are being done already. But I think I'll go to that second. But I think the first thing that can be done is really for us, the regulator, also to do our job. We've conducted fuel audits just to make sure that only for the pass-through fuel cost, because we're paying for the cost of importation. That's why I mentioned it earlier. The cost of coal and gas imported, we pay for all those, and they're called the pass-through fuel costs. But we need to make sure, the regulator needs to make sure, the distribution utilities need to make sure that only true costs are passed on to consumers. And we did that by initiating what we call the fuel audit. We started it, I think, in December of 2022. It's a continuing process. We have penalized some distribution utilities that we have seen have been passing on charges without even reviewing the fuel invoices of their suppliers. So that's a big breach of that contract with the consumers. So that's one. But the second thing really is, and this is what gets me excited about where we are in our power sector now. Consumers now are more empowered. Retail competition. Today, it's no longer just the large consumers that can buy directly from their supplier of choice. Even households, small consumers, with what we call the retail aggregation program that we have started at the ERC in 2024, consumers can now band together, and then they become big if they band together. Then they can already contract for their own suppliers. And we've had schools, banks, retail establishments that have joined this what we call the revolution, actually, a
Yeah.
consumer revolution.
More options on the table. Chair Mona, last question. A year from now, what would success look like from your lenses?
Okay. A year from now sounds like a long time because I go on a day-to-day basis here at the commission. But what I think for as a regulator, um, ironically, my belief is a success would look for the context that we have in the Philippines. Success would be more would look like an industry with less regulation, more competition. That's really what I aim to see. And we see that already in our retail market. There's more competition now. We don't need to regulate it because consumers are exercising directly their consent, their power of choice. And that's what we hope to see, more of these competition.
Yeah, looking forward to that, more healthy competition, because power is the fuel of economic growth. So it's so important. Thank you for what you do in this sector, Chair Mona.
Thank you. Thank you, Mikey. Thank you for this opportunity to update also everyone.